You like movies about gladiators?
Those men wanted to have sex with me.
Great Scott!
Nice beaver.
He's a Cinderella boy.
Ramble is a pussy.
Come with me if you want to live.
Hello, and welcome to RetroRamble. I'm Charlie McGee.
I'm George McGee.
And welcome to a podcast dedicated to the films that George and I grew up on, films of the 80s and 90s, action films, blockbusters, cult classics, you name it. If it meant something to us, we're going to cover it. And this week, we're going to be covering the massive 1991 classic by James Cameron, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. A very big film for us, George, wouldn't you say?
Huge film. I mean, it's one of my favorite films of all time. It's top of a lot of people's lists for action films, for sequels, for sci-fis. I've got a lot of fond memories of growing up with this film.
I remember seeing this film together in a cinema in France when we were both, as was the style of the time, far too young to see this. Is that correct?
Yes, we were in a ski resort, and I think that's why we got through the sort of legal loophole of seeing a 15 rated film at the cinema. So it must have been 6 months after it had been released in the UK. But yes, I remember we were quite lucky to see it on the big screen back in, it must have been sort of February 1992.
Yeah, because I think I was 13, so you would have been about 8 or 9. And, but I think in France they're a bit more lenient, and it's kind of what I suppose the 12A is today. In that with 15s, because we went in with parents, there was at least one parent with us, and I think if you did that, you had more likelihood of getting in. But I'll never forget seeing that film, and it's weird because I can still remember the subtitles underneath when we were watching it.
Yeah, I remember the French audience laughing lots at the point where Arnie's being interrogated, sort of like, so why can't you kill people? And he goes, why? And he just keeps saying why. The Frenchies were loving that.
Excellent. So we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to, obviously, as we like to do, I'm just the host with a love of film. George does have movie qualifications and knows a lot more than I do about what goes on in the industry. So we'll be talking about the production. And there was quite, obviously, a long gap between Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. So what James Cameron's vision was and how it was made possible. But I think before we go any further, a quick word from George on housekeeping.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Housekeeping. So we are movie fans. We're not journalists. We're doing this out the love of our hearts. Be warned, there will be times where we will ramble. We live up to our name. There will be occasional swearing, bad impressions, and we're likely to go on tangents from time to time. Special mention, sort of a heads up for this episode in particular. Unfortunately, we had some mobile interference. It was probably those pesky machines from Skynet were trying to muscle in on our chat. So there are going to be periods in this recording where there might be a little bit of a change in the audio quality. Charlie and I have been through the recording and we've cleaned it up as much as possible. And we still think it is it's a really good chat. It's really worth listening to rather than re-recording and starting again. We're really happy with the review. So please bear with us in those times of interference. And we hope you enjoy the chat.
Yeah, it's just those damn machines. Well, it's either the machines or it's Axel Rose getting his own back for us criticising his musical talent. So, George, what are we recording on this time? It's the 90s. What technology is available if we're taking a retro ramble?
Well, I've had a chat with Miles Dyson, and he's given me this really high-spec PC that's got this thing called a dial-up modem. So I think it's going to really take off. I don't think there's going to be any issues with it.
It's machines of the future. What could possibly go wrong? So without further ado, we're going to get our ramble on, and here's the show.
Enjoy.
Same make, same model, new
mission. Once, he was programmed to destroy the future.
You don't know what it's like to try to kill one of these things.
Now, his mission...
Get down!
...is to protect it. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Terminator 2, Judgment Day. This time, he's back. For good.
Trust me.
So, George, we've been back to 1991 before. We did Point Break, that amazing film directed by Catherine Bigelow. But what's this I'm hearing about some ex-gentleman lover of hers, some guy called Jimmy Cameron, deciding to take up the reins and have a shot at movie making? What's all this about?
This is quite a milestone for us because this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first sequel we've done on Retro Ramble.
Affirmative.
So yeah, this, believe it or not, is the sequel to the film The Terminator. It's brought to us by James Cameron, writer, director, Canadian filmmaker, inventor, engineer, philanthropist.
One more time?
Philanthropist. And a deep sea explorer. And I don't know if he's told you this, Charlie, but he's a vegan as well.
Right, okay. So, okay.
That's a bit of a bad joke on my behalf. How do you know if somebody's a vegan? Don't worry, they'll fucking tell you. James Cameron, everyone should have heard of him because he is the man that has the two biggest box office successes of all time, in number one being Avatar, number two being Titanic. As a result, people have fallen out of love with him, but he's a great credit to the sci-fi genre, to changing the face of blockbusters as a whole. He is the king of making an amazing sequel. So just to give a quick overview of his career. So he started off working in the special effects department, in the art department under Roger Corman, who does a lot of cult, low budget movies. He did a little bit of directing on the sequel to Piranha 2, but then he was fired off that, but still did some work on it. But his first feature was The Terminator, which he wrote and directed. But Terminator 1 was made for $6.5 million, filmed over 6 weeks. The studio that were releasing it, they just expected it to be...
a B movie. Just be a B movie.
Yeah, it's a B movie. It'll last a week at the cinema and then it'll be done and dusted. But it was a massive success. It went on to earn over 78 million worldwide. So on a 6.5 million budget, that's quite a decent return on investment. Made him a household name. So he quickly went on to make Aliens. Again, there's a lot of parallels with Aliens and with Terminator 2 in terms of taking those familiar elements that you really liked about the first one and effectively changing the genre. So Ridley Scott's Alien is a haunted house in space, a bog standard sci-fi horror. Aliens is a action film. It's Vietnam in space. Turns, Sigourney Weaver, who was the damsel in distress in Alien, into a warrior woman, heroine, kicking ass, taking names, taping a flamethrower to a massive machine gun.
Women are amazing at multitasking.
Very much so. Bigger budget, more action, and turning genre conventions on its head.
So obviously he made Terminator. It did an amazing job. It washed its face. Then it put on moisturizer. 78 million is a great job. But he didn't just do nothing between Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. He worked, what was it? Was it The Abyss? There's quite some time passed between the two, yeah.
So 1984 was Terminator. Then he did Aliens in 1986. He did some story script work on one of my guilty pleasures, Rambo First Blood Part 2, before it was rewritten by Stallone and had more sort of, exploding commies via bow and arrow. He then did The Abyss in 1989, and The Abyss actually, as even Cameron is happy to admit, is probably his least successful film. It's still worth a watch.
It's a good film.
I still recommend it. So in The Abyss, there's a first use of 3D image mapping of someone's face, which would go on to pave the way for the T-1000 effects. Apparently, Cameron had always wanted to have that T-1000, that liquid metal, that moving Terminator from the get-go. He wanted to include him in Terminator 1. And apparently Terminator, the story, his original idea for Terminator 1, it was going to be, the first half was going to be Terminator 1, the second half of the film was going to be Terminator 2, but budget and technology just wasn't available.
So it's crazy that he had that vision even back then, that, you know, even before, even when writing the Terminator, that he either didn't have the budget or the technology wasn't available, but just crazy that he had that in his mind.
Love him or hate him, the man is, I think he's a very intelligent, very ambitious man, and he's always, you cannot deny he's always trying to push technology to its fullest potential. He's maximising the budget, but for good reasons. He's not doing things for the sake of it. It's all about making it look as good as possible, making it feel as real as possible, and special effects, CGI effects to drive the story forward.
Well, James Cameron is one person before the movie starts, and he's another person when the movie begins. Really great asset to have this kind of a strong vision and determination and passion and talent, but don't get in his fucking way.
The success of Terminator 1, they've been planning to do a sequel pretty much straight after, but they effectively had to wait for effects to catch up with his vision. But there was also the complications of rights. Terminator 1 was made with Cameron's ex-wife, Gail Ann Hurd, who is still a very successful producer. She's one of the producers on The Walking Dead, and she's produced a fair amount of blockbusters. She produced Aliens with James Cameron as well. But come the late 80s, they had grown apart, and obviously, as we've discussed, James Cameron was currently shacked up with Catherine Bigelow. So he wasn't on good terms with Gail Ann Hurd, but they managed to put differences aside, and the studio, Carlico Pictures, run by the very impressively named Mario Kassar, bought out Gail Ann Hurd and basically bought out all the rights. So just to
make it all possible.
Yeah. So that's why there's quite a gap between the two films, technology and rights, effectively. In that time, so we're talking, 6 years, Schwarzenegger's become a household name. Terminator gave birth to his career, but then from then on, he's been playing the hero, and his status as an actor, as a celebrity, has grown. So in the early 90s, around the same time, he was quite actively, his political intentions were quite active. He was married to Maria Shriver from the Kennedy family, but he was quite an outspoken Republican, and was the fitness czar for George Bush Sr. So he was quite active in the media. He was playing a hero at the box office. And off that, sort of the back of that, Cameron sort of had the thought, well, people aren't really gonna have trouble accepting Arnold as a villain again. How can I twist that expectation on its head? So they were playing around with different ideas. One of the ideas was that it was going to be two Arnolds, so a good T-800 versus a bad T-800, but they scrapped that idea because, again, Cameron really wanted to push with this idea of the T-1000, this, morphing liquid metal villain. Then, quite bizarrely, at one point, they briefly considered making Michael Biehn, who played Kyle Reese in the first Terminator, as the T-1000. So
wow.
He would play.
That would have been completely nuts.
Exactly. So basically reversing the roles. So the hero and the villain from the first film swap roles. They then realised, for the average Joe, that's probably too confusing. And then, obviously, they discovered an up-and-coming actor, Robert Patrick, who Cameron had seen playing a hired goon in Die Hard 2, and cast him as a T-1000, which kind of went back to his original idea for the Terminator. Was, before he met Arnie, Cameron's idea for the Terminator was a robot assassin that could blend into the crowd, that could be, would walk, could get through any crowd, and sort of like an unseen assassin. But on meeting Arnie, who was actually auditioning for the role of Kyle Reese, they started talking, and then he was like, actually, it could be really interesting to have you as the villain.
You look like a machine.
Well, that's it. And he's not so subtle. But anyway, it kind of it played out quite well.
That Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
So, considering how much of a low-budget film Terminator 1 was, and they were basically filming through the night, they were cutting corners left, right and centre, a complete contrast for the action set pieces, the special effects, Arnie's salary alone made Terminator 2 at the time the most expensive blockbuster ever made. A record that Cameron would continually go on to break and reclaim for himself. So obviously Titanic was the most expensive film ever made, and I think Avatar was one of the most expensive films ever made. But yeah, I say he's always trying to push himself and push the budget.
Because I can remember us talking about this at the time. I can remember us having the conversation about how much Arnie was earning per word, because it was all published, wasn't it?
Yeah, so his $15 million salary across a total of 700 words of dialogue meant he was paid $21,500 per word. So,
wow.
Hasta la vista, that sentence cost 86 grand.
I bought a car with that.
Well, you joke, as part of his, on top of his $15 million salary, he was given a Gulfstream jet by producer Mario Kassar, and they're estimated to be around £15 million.
Maybe it happened more than we know.
Maybe, but in Arnold's autobiography, which did I tell you I have just finished reading, he used it to, I say he was fitness czar for George Bush Jr., so he was flying all over the country and meeting with all these different senators, and it sort of helped him effectively create the foundations of his political career.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the only thing I would say is I just remember at the time when it came out, because we saw this together in the cinema, that there was a lot of talk about how much money had been spent on it. And it was, to be completely honest, I think I was like about 12 years old. I don't even know how much money that is. It was kind of that reaction to stuff being bandied about. But when people are using millions here, millions there, but then they were finishing off the sentence with, this is the most expensive film ever made. As a 12-year-old, it just made me even more excited. And then when you watch the film and you see those effects, and not only just the plot is great, but it's what Cameron is now very well known for. He is a very visual, visceral director. He cares so much about the visual experience that we get to see. And so even though we spent, like we just did in Batman in the last episode, talking a lot about production, he's made the 2 or 3, I think he's in the top 10. He's got 3 films in the top 10 highest grossing films of all time because of the amount of work he puts in the production.
Much longer production period than Terminator 1, just due to the budget, the set pieces. Due to financial commitments, they had to make sure it was ready in time for summer of 1991. I think it was July 4th weekend, Independence Day. As a result, they were right against it. So what Cameron did was, which is quite unheard of, he was filming during the week and then he was editing the film at weekends. So he was editing the film as it went along.
On the go. Wow.
So, yeah, quite unheard of. Usually, in most cases, people film all their stuff and then it goes into post-production where they edit it and put it all together. But I think it's kind of what we touched on in Predator, that they had a bit of a break and they started editing, and it sometimes helps the story to say, okay, this is what we've got, because you kind of don't have to do that whole period of reshoots because you're editing on the fly and you can reshoot on the fly. This hype machine is building up. The whole idea of seeding Schwarzenegger is, he's back, but this time he's the good guy. But they did, again, we touched on in the last episode on the sort of the beginnings of the teaser trailer. So this had a special teaser trailer filmed for it. So Stan Winston, who's behind all the Terminator effects, was given 150 grand by Jim Cameron and was told, yeah, you go and make this teaser trailer, do whatever you want. And it's a great teaser trailer. It's basically the Terminator production line, just to show sort of, the exoskeleton, and then goes in the machine and it comes out and it's Arnie. We'll put it on the blog. But yeah, it's a great example of having unique content that's made that doesn't feature in the final film. I suppose the only other thing is bringing back Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, this time, as the sort of the woman that knows that the world is likely to go to shit and nobody believes her. For this sort of battle-scarred warrior woman, she went through months of training with Israeli commandos, personal trainer. She learned how to pick locks, judo. She really went method and did a lot of preparation for her role of Sarah Connor.
It shows.
Broke my arm.
There are 215 bones in the human body. That's one.
I think we've covered everything we need to do. Let's dive into this film. So we've got a cold open, wouldn't you say, George? Or in Marvel terminology, opening credits sting.
Yes, something like that. So I think in the original Terminator, it's been a while since I've seen it, but there's a bit of prologue, there's a bit of text on screen. And then throughout the film, you got to see sort of snippets of Kyle Reese in the apocalyptic future of Los Angeles 2029. So the film opens. This is it's a great opening. It cuts from present day 1991, LA freeway, everyone's stuck in traffic.
Having a great time, sweating in their cars, stuck in 7 lanes of traffic.
Yeah, it's like a establishing shot of Michael Bay. It's, like a very orange, hazy sunset LA freeway, jam-packed with traffic, with machines subtext. Machines everywhere. Quickly cuts to flashes forwards to the apocalyptic LA of 2029 and seeing the Skynet has taken over, the world. The machines are now ruling the planet. And it's a fantastic opening. Cameron did a great deal on a limited budget with Terminator 1, showing this future war. But it's really great to see what he can do with a much bigger budget without it making it feel completely different.
He keeps the same look and feel, but it's the sound effects, and it's just, the music in itself. But we all know that chase music that he's taken from the first film, and it's that sort of like this weird strings sort of thing. But I just think it's like the story is so prophetic. Is it prophetic? Prophylitic? I'm having a philanthropist moment.
Prophetic.
But it's just so well done. It's just like. And that first scene of the Terminator stepping and crushing the human skull, it's like, okay.
So I think you'll agree with me on this, that this depiction of the future war, it's something that the sequels have gone at great lengths to have revisited. Obviously, Terminator Salvation spends its whole time, the whole story is based in this future war, but none of the sequels have managed to match this, have they?
No, they haven't even come close. And it's really sad considering he'd thrown them such a bone. It said, look, this is what it's like. There's these, I don't even know what they're called, but these kind of like, these, the drones.
They're known as hunter killers, apparently.
Yeah, those things flying about. And even the way they explode, you can tell that it's a real physical object. That it's a model, and it looks amazing.
Again, it's like we're talking about with Batman, the attention to model work and integrating them with CGI, with rear projection. Those Terminators you see at the start are fully made, animatronic models made by Stan Winston. So, they're not CGI. I actually watched the other night the opening of Terminator Genesis, where they basically try and recreate this future war, and it's so CGI, it feels like a video game, it's so over the top, it's just not right. Whereas this feels gritty, it feels real, it feels tangible.
Yeah.
So you've got the future war, then it cuts back to present day with the arrival of the Terminators.
No, because and then you have the scene, you have the music, and we should just talk for a second, just the fact that it's just flames and a Terminator coming towards you. I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's an amazing, just the dun, dun, dun. And then it closes on a...
Well, that's where the whole idea came from. The whole concept of the Terminator came as a fever dream to James Cameron. So he was in Italy making Piranha 2 and was full of flu or something like that, and had this fever dream of this metal skeleton walking through the flames to try and grab him. And
that's crazy.
And he woke up and started writing, and that's what evolved into Terminator. So that is that motif came to him in a dream, bizarrely.
And then we go straight into the film, and like it's machines, trucks, phones, pressure things, everything, machines everywhere.
Yeah, again, you've got throughout this film, you've got that element of repetition. There's a lot of callbacks to Terminator 1. In this, Arnie's T-800 turns up at a biker bar. We're led to believe, despite the sort of the heavy marketing that seeded, the whole role reversal, this time Schwarzenegger's the good guy. You're completely, it's very ambiguous. You are led to assume that this is the same version of the T-800 from Terminator 1 that he is programmed to kill, and he's back.
You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. Maybe he starts bad and they make him good. So you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. You know that he's going to be good at some point in the film, but maybe he's going to, change later on. So it's done very well. He's brought into this bar, and it's an iconic scene that has gone on to be. It's been parodied in The Simpsons. It's been parodied God knows how many times, that whole thing. But it's just an amazing.
Well, that line, "Give me your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle," is one of the most famous quotes from this film. But it's that repetition. It's that ridiculousness of a naked guy walking in the first one, he encounters 3 punks. In this one, he walks into a crowded bar and everyone's, full of gnarly, sort of big burly bikers, and they're all taking the piss out of him. Big mistake. I don't know if you've seen the behind the scenes footage, but, obviously he's walking through this bar and everyone's looking down at Arnie's junk and going, and the waitress is like, ooh, and everyone's just like laughing because he's naked. But in reality, Arnie's wearing the most loudest board shorts you've ever seen. They're like bright purple and green board shorts. So he's getting the desired effect of everyone's like looking down going, what the fuck are you wearing?
But getting back to the film, George, just that bit of him walking around and it's chopping between everybody looking at him and then how he sees the room, and he's scanning, and you've got the 90s computer graphics, which they've kept it from the original Terminator, but it just makes even more sense now because if a machine was designing a machine, we're not talking about Steve Jobs, Apple type of user interface. It would just be the most basic sort of noughts and ones. And I just love how the camera's going, and when it's doing everybody's matches and it's just going on their size, and it's like, no, I need somebody. And it's like, Arnie, there's nobody the exact same size as you in the world. If you look at him, in terms of how wide he is and how tall he is, anyway, I'm getting off topic, but it's a great scene. I love the attention to detail in that, where they do make the mistake of trying to take him down, and the guy that he's after, when he throws him into the kitchen and the guy lands on the stove,
on the hobs,
and he's there for a second, and then it looks so realistic because you see him, he's knocked out, and then he's like, oh my God, I'm burning all over.
Yeah.
So
it's one thing I realised when I saw it because I went and saw it for the 3D re-release literally a week or so ago, and they've remastered it in 4K. So the print looks amazing, and the picture's so high. They've cleaned it up, brightened the colours and everything, and Arnie looks amazing. He's obviously in peak condition, and I think this is probably one of the last films where he's required to be seen with his shirt off and everything. But yeah, he looks fantastic in that role. Arnie looks a bit like a fat old lady these days. Don't get this wrong, Arnie. I love you, big guy. I love you. Let's go to Robert Patrick. So the other Terminator appears. Again, it's very clever because you immediately realise who you think this could be the Carl Reese character. This could be the hero, because the policeman turns up. You see him punch the policeman, but you don't see him effectively stab him. And it doesn't. You don't hear any sort of like sheathing metallic noise. And then he's wearing the policeman's outfit, so you assume he's stolen his clothes. But apparently, one of the minor edits that James Cameron has made for this 3D re-release, this conversion, when Robert Patrick turns up and is leaning over the policeman to pick up his gun, apparently in the 4K remastering, you can clearly see his ball bag, his ball sack sticking out between his legs. So what they've done is they've done a bit of a George Lucas, and they've put a very strategically placed bit of CGI rubble to cover up his modesty. So, and even Robert Patrick even talks about it in an Empire podcast recently. So,
I wonder if you had to sign a release form. Do you give permission for your Johnson?
I think he's quite proud of it.
Say, that's a nice bike.
But I forgot how good Robert Patrick is in this. I mean, this is one of my favourite films of all time, and I do watch it regularly. But it's probably been at least a couple of years since I last watched it, and you forget how creepily charming he is, compared to Arnie's sort of monosyllabic, Sarah Connor.
He's clearly version 2.0. And as you say, he's thinner, limber, so quick. And he's got personality.
No, but it's the whole point where he goes up to John Connor's foster parents and he's like, have you got a photo of John? And he's like, he's a good looking boy. Yeah, it's so creepy. And then there's sort of like, oh yeah, the other guy's been looking for him as well. It's like, oh, you don't need to worry about him.
I'll take care of him.
And it makes Arnie look like a caveman in comparison. And as you say, it is like a software update. They have to assimilate. They have to, be, for assimilating into the crowd more, be friendlier instead of less robotic. So, we're introduced to both Terminators are after John Connor. We're introduced to John Connor and his best mate, who I'm just going to call Mullet Head.
George, we need to talk, I think, I don't know, do we have a mullet warning? There are a lot of, I think we'll just call this is mullet example number 1.
I mean, it's quite a snapshot of the sort of late 80s, early 90s, because you've got the ginger mullet, he's got a denim waistcoat, tie-dye. What's on the stereo, Charlie? What's playing?
Same thing that's on his T-shirt. Guns N' Roses, God, you damn right it is.
You could be mine.
Awesome.
Which throughout that scene where him and John Connor, they go to the cash point, they go to the mall.
Axel Rose is only a few steps behind.
They are listening to that same song all day long.
I get the feeling that the single's just come out. I mean, obviously, I don't want to be a geek or nothing, but I mean, we're talking about like Use Your Illusion Volume 2, which came out roughly about the same summer because I think I saw them live. But maybe he just bought the single.
Yeah, maybe. I think you bought the single as well.
George, I had both albums, both Use Your Illusion 1, which is probably the better, or was it? And then there was Use Your Illusion 2, which kind of only had You Could Be Mine and November Rain, which were good. All the rest were so-so. Anyway, we'll cover that. We'll cover that in the Guns N' Roses podcast next week.
So, as well as introducing John Connor, we cut to Sarah Connor, who is busy working out, turned her bed on her side, and is just doing some pull-ups. She's just, gone as the ditzy waitress with the perm. I'm no mother of the future to badass warrior woman. And I don't know if it's just me, but I kind of, found her strangely attractive in that opening scene. She's all sweaty, her hair's messed up. I mean, Linda Hamilton's an attractive lady.
No, I thought that throughout because I'm a manly man and I'm allowed to feel that way. But
I have feelings.
I am entitled to feel that way. I thought that she was both seductive, badass, but just to bring this into current affairs, James Cameron has recently spoken out saying that as good a film as Wonder Woman is, it does not put the feminist cause forward at all, because yes, it's a film about women, but you've got Wonder Woman dressed like she looks like she's been dressed by a man. because she looks a certain way. But Linda Hamilton and what James Cameron did, that is sisters doing it for themselves. That is a badass and an amazing mother, and she's hot, and it's not just being a badass. There's something about her,
There's definitely something about her, because James Cameron would go on to have an affair with her and marry her, make her his third wife.
Well, if you've got a good thing.
Or I might have even said in Point Break that he has as many ex-wives as there are Avatar sequels on the horizon. We then get to the reveal of the Terminators. Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? After a thrilling intro to this thing known as an arcade. What are these arcade machines?
But all of the films that he's playing, it's like, this is going to be useful. This is how you become a supreme military commander, because you played Afterburner and that other game.
Missile Command. But off the back of my trivia in last month's episode for Batman, we have some new location trivia. So this mall or the Galleria, as they refer to it, is the same mall where they filmed previous Arnie blockbuster hit Commando.
Wow.
It's known as the Sherman Oaks Galleria.
So it is actually called the Galleria, George. So they weren't just being cute.
They weren't just being cute, but, we would call it, some of us would call it a shopping centre, some of it would call it shopping mall, some of it would just call it, that place I go on the weekend.
Exactly, or the Metro Centre.
Metro Centre. So, we get to see the first reveal, a nice callback to what's Arnie doing. How's Arnie smuggling in his weapon, Charlie? He's got his gun in some roses. You could be mine.
I must have spotted that before. Yeah, I think we've talked about that before, but it's been a long time. So, sorry, that's just gone over my head.
It's a great reveal of, them both facing off. There's some great product placement as well, because there's the guy that gets caught up as a human shield between the Terminators and gets shot loads of times. But he's holding a can of Pepsi. Then John Connor bursts through the doors past a massive Pepsi vending machine. I think Pepsi's throughout this film, but it's quite key in the first. It plays a pivotal part. Again, you could say it's machines, but
Yeah, more and more machines.
That is the start of a very good action scene. You've got that first face-off in the mall. It quickly turns into foot chase. You quickly get to see how fast the T-1000 can run. As opposed to Arnie's lumbering T-800, this guy is scarily fast. And then it turns into a great vehicle chase. Truck versus bike with another bike in pursuit.
But it's a chase movie, like the first one. It does, even though it has kind of hot genres, it's still a chase, from start to finish.
Yeah, and it's a cracking chase scene, and from that whole sort of jumping down into the storm drain, we talked about last month about that preparation that Arnie went through for flipping the shotgun round his hand whilst riding a bike. The amount of prep that, he was literally tearing his fingers apart to get it right, to make sure it looked as cool as possible, but also fitted with the character, looked as robotic and machine-like as possible, because he's literally steering the bike, flipping the gun, shooting locks. It's all very precise, and it has to look perfect.
And even on those little bits, they've even CGI'd his face in the recent version as well. I noticed that.
Yeah, there's the infamous bit where he jumps down into the storm drain. In the original cut, it's a very obvious stuntman. And then there's a bit where he undertakes the T-1000 in his truck to pick up John Connor again. They've digitally mapped Arnie's face onto the stuntman. Hats off to James Cameron. He hasn't done, the whole George Lucas and inserted random CG, more Terminators and more, bits. He could go overboard, but he's literally
it's just been tiny little bits.
Yeah, tiny adjustments that just make it a less, less errors effectively. And I think it's the other thing that I sort of forgot about is how good is Arnie with his, until John Connor tells him to become, to lighten up and to become more human, how robotic he is. So when John Connor's chatting to him saying, oh, everything my mum said is true, everything, she wasn't lying the whole time. And Arnie's just sitting, scanning side to side, just scanning the area. And always just reloading his shotgun without looking at the gun. And there's just so many little bits that he's brilliant at until he's obviously required to sort of start taking on more human characteristics. And I also thought it's quite clever with how they slowly reveal all the T-1000's powers, because it's sort of, okay, yeah, he's absorbing the bullets and can morph back into it, but then you see that he can actually take on the appearance of other people. He can turn his arms into blades, and the fact he can't just be blown up like the first Terminator could. So it's all quite quickly sort of established, this guy's, he should really be scared of it. There is really a threat against, you used to think Terminator 1, he was the unstoppable killing machine, but with enough firepower, he could be blown up. With this liquid metal machine cannot be stopped. And it is quite it's a brilliant, it's a brilliant villain, isn't it?
Oh, they do a brilliant job of just completely reversing the problem that was in the first one, is that, we can crush him or we can stop him. We just need to lock him in a box. Whereas this one, he'll get out of anything. He can replicate anyone. And I think, if I remember correctly, the rating of the film hinged on, I don't remember her name, but Vasquez from Aliens, when she does that knife into our friend Xander.
Xander Berkeley.
Xander Berkeley, a recurring feature on this podcast. That was what needed the 15 rating, because that's the most graphic.
Oh, no. You're also forgetting about the other T-1000 kill where he spikes the guy through the eye with his finger.
Yeah.
You're going to give us some twin trivia. Where have we seen those? Because that's not CGI effects. They are that when the T-1000 assumes the role of the security guard at the mental asylum, it's actually two people, isn't it?
Yeah, because I mean that scene that we're moving on to is a great scene, but then you think the attention to detail that, what you want to have is that, this T-1000 is able to replicate people. So obviously there's mirroring. They've been doing this for years, but it's like, let's get twins. I know, I've seen these guys from Gremlins too. So, I remember this incorrectly, that these guys were brought in just for this one scene. But there's actually quite a lot. There's quite a few scenes with them together. Like, not only do they stand in front of each other, but he kills him and then he drags him away and he takes his gun off and then he's walking around. So those twins made quite a lot of money out of 2 films just for being twins.
In the early 90s alone. We've already moved on to another great set piece, quite an extended bit of storytelling. And you've got that great twist of, as Sarah thinks she's made her escape, she runs into and she thinks what we should have all thought without seeing the trailers, it's an evil Terminator. And she
didn't see any of the trailers.
She's Charlie. She's been in a mental asylum. Of course, she hasn't seen any trailers. But that I still think, like, that bit where Arnie turns up and just starts throwing around the orderlies through doors, into windows, is pretty graphic. Even though he's been programmed not to kill, he's just making sure that they're very, very badly injured. And he'll live. And then again, getting into the chase scene, get in the car, T-1000's running after them, as they're both shooting at him, still running after them, and then jumping onto the car with his long spiky arms. That was
some great effects.
Great effects that was brilliantly parodied in The Simpsons, where Homer's chasing after Ned Flanders' car with his golf clubs. Neddy!
Yeah.
And when he comes through the bush.
Yeah.
We've talked about the mental asylum, but have we talked about the amount of mullets in the mental asylum?
George, yeah, I mean, we've got to do another mullet alert. Another mullet alert, because it starts creeping in. Obviously, yeah, you think, Eddie Furlong's character's best friend. It's the 90s. You can have a friend who's got a mullet, but there's that. We didn't talk about it at the time, George, because I didn't realize how much of a mullet problem there was. But every single guy that the T-1000 speaks to, like when he's looking for John Connor, they all have mullets. Like, no, trust me, if you watch this film again, just start counting. We're talking like double figure mullets. So then you get to the asylum, And the woman on reception, who looks like she smokes about 100,000 cigarettes a day, she's got a mullet. And then as we move through from scene to scene and it escalates, the security woman, also...
The one with the cast. She's got
yeah.
an arm in a cast. I was trying to work out, is that some storytelling? Is Sarah broken her arm, or is it just, you've got a great mullet, it doesn't matter, your arm's in a cast, we'll put you in the role anyway?
I like to think that actually happened in real life from when she hits Arnie's sunglasses. That the first time that she did that, Arnie went nuts, and that's why her arm's in a cast. That's what I like to tell myself. But yeah, so you've got her. She has a mullet, but it's gelled back.
Business at the front, party at the back.
Yeah. The other thing that we skirted over, those when John Connor first realizes he's got his own walking, talking Terminator, the two guys who come over, who you call them dipshit.
There's some more mullets.
He's got a massive mullet. Okay, so I'm just saying that this film is all about machines
the two ends.
and mullets. Machines and mullets. And Axel Rose.
Who didn't have a mullet, but he had long hair.
So she had many mullets, many different types.
I actually remember a few years ago on the train back home, and it was like 9 o'clock at night, and you drunkenly sending me screenshots. You were obviously watching Terminator 2, and you were just sending me pictures of mullets from Terminator 2, just with nothing but the word mullet, and it was like
they're everywhere in this film. I never, maybe they were part of the public lexicon at the time, but they just floated by. But the 90s, the early 90s, I mean, where were these mullets in Point Break?
Well,
Swayze has one, but maybe he doesn't. He just looks like he's got long hair. They just didn't seem as present in Point Break as they are in this film.
I don't know. Swayze's mullet doesn't really abide by normal rules. It's kind of like king of the mullets. But for more chat about Point Break, check out our other episode. Yeah, so there's some great pacing throughout. I think that's what's very good about this film, is that there's a lot of exposition to get through, and they are quite clever with making Arnie the exposition machine. Tell us about, how does Skynet happen? Who's Miles Dyson? And Arnie's doing that sort of recounting whilst driving.
First, Tim Berners-Lee had just created the internet, so he should have started there like I did.
Is Bryan Adams still at number one? The last one, Genesis, is just making Arnie is just reduced to a walking exposition machine of, okay, now I'm going to make a time machine, then we're going to go forward because the time has not been set. And it's just like, it serves a function in this film, and it does it really well. But I think the pacing between the different set pieces, you've got that storm drain chase, the mental asylum breakout. Then you've got a little bit of downtime in the desert. So we haven't touched on the special edition version, have we?
No, we haven't, because there's quite a lot of it in these scenes where they turn him off. They're taking his bullets out. They reset the processor, don't they? Processor.
Yeah. So in the theatrical cut, John Connor says, can you learn to become more human? And he's like, oh yeah, it's a learning. My CPU is a learning system. But in the director's cut, the special edition cut, whatever it's called, the Skynet cut, they actually do, when they're fixing Arnie up after the mental asylum breakout, they're pulling out all his bullets. Sarah and John actually physically open up Arnie's head and take out his chip to reset it, so he can reset the system so he can start learning human characteristics. And then it's a really interesting dynamic between Sarah and John, because Sarah immediately gets a chip and goes to smash it. And she's like, we can end this now. We can't trust this machine. Let's just, you and I, make a break for it and we'll be done. And it's an interesting character move for John, because John takes leadership and he's like, well, no, we need him. He's the only proof we've got. He can protect us. You've always said, I'm going to be this great leader. Can you not just start trusting me?
It is a great scene. It's surprising they left it out.
It's a great scene. And I can understand there's a lot of stuff they edited for pacing, because it's quite a long film anyway. But it's a cracking scene. And it's also a technically brilliant scene, because you've got Sarah Connor and John operating on Arnie in the mirror, and how they've done it, they haven't done it through CGI. So they've got doubles on the other side of the mirror, but Linda Hamilton has a twin sister. And so they've got Linda Hamilton acting as Sarah Connor's mirror image. You've got Arnie, who looks like he's in the mirror, and they're actually operating on a prosthetic. So
robotic Arnie.
Yeah, robotic, and it's brilliantly done. And it just goes to show everyone remembers this film for its cracking special effects, but it's got some amazing
twin work.
Amazing twin work, as we've already covered. But it's also got some fantastic practical effects as well. Like, pretty much, this is probably the pinnacle of practical effects before we moved into...
Before we got lazy.
Before we got lazy, before, the CGI took over. And that's
because I'm saying it like that because Star Wars is going back to a mix.
Well, that's
so
it.
I think there was this lazy period where everything went CGI, and we had films like The Phantom Menace. Maybe this was later 90s, but there was too much CGI. But this was, I think, as you say, at the pinnacle where everything in the car chases is physical, gun battles are physical, things are exploding, fire is real. But the CGI stuff is for the stuff that just isn't possible. Whereas a few years down the line, they started just replacing even things that you could do with a stunt crew. They just start replacing them to save money.
The thing that annoys me is that everyone talks about the sort of the birth of CGI was effectively Jurassic Park, which was 93. It was 2 years later.
Plus, that is not dated as well as this film.
It hasn't dated as well as this film, but again, it's one thing that people picked up on Jurassic World, which was released 2 years ago. They said, because Jurassic Park was a mix of prosthetic, animatronics and CGI, that the effects in Jurassic Park hold up better than they do in Jurassic World. And it's kind of the same with, I suppose they did a little bit with Genesis. They did a little bit of practical work with Arnie's face. But again, it's still doing, I think even in Terminator 3, instead of Arnie having a prosthetic, metal face attached to him with the, an LED eye, they've done it all CGI and it just doesn't look right.
We didn't talk about the dream sequence that Sarah Connor has with Michael Biehn, and could I just go on record as saying I think every film from the 1990s should have a Michael Biehn dream sequence in it.
I couldn't get over that. The first time, I think I actually saw, first time I saw this special edition, I think actually BBC showed it on telly, which is quite a rarity for terrestrial channel to play a director's cut. And I was like, I don't remember Michael Biehn popping up in Terminator 2. And the other thing that shocked me is he hasn't aged a day. I mean, I know it's
still in wardrobe.
And Jim, it's okay. I've still got my costume. Okay, Mike. Waiting for the call, were you?
Yeah, and let's just say it's better than the extra features because you and I we both bought the Terminator special edition DVDs. But both Terminator 1 and 2, and we've done the same with our Blu-rays. And we had much fun watching Michael Biehn on the special features on Terminator 1 for the deleted scenes.
Really pushing his acting range. Some would say too far.
Yeah, anyway. So, George,
I think on that note, I think it speaks volumes that I actually bought Terminator 2 on Blu-ray because it was on offer before I actually owned a Blu-ray player, because I knew that I would need it in my life. So yeah, they've reset.
We've had some downtime. She's now looking to fix the future. Is all about Dyson and Cyberdyne.
Well, no, we've kind of missed the little sojourn to south of the border to go and find their friends in Mexico that have an impressive amount of weapons. And I've got so many questions about this. Did the Mexicans, did they believe in Judgment Day, or were they collecting guns just in case? Are these the Mexicans that Donald Trump's been warning us about? What's going on?
My interpretation of that was that because the way that John Connor introduces it is that she always goes for military types, guys who've got some military training.
Guys who are good with guns.
Yeah, so he could learn stuff from them. And my understanding was that that's her cache. That's her weapons cache.
Oh, right, okay. But where's
that was my take on it.
Where she got it all from? I mean, you've got a goddamn minigun in there. No, there's some really nice bits because you're seeing Arnie bonding with John Connor. Or sorry, I keep calling him Arnie, but the T-800, Uncle Bob bonding with John Connor. You've got some... I would say some of the weaknesses of this film is the fact that it just randomly decides to drop in some Sarah Connor voiceover, even though it's not, the whole film's not from her perspective. There's bits where she's not in it, and then it's all of a sudden, I mean, it makes...
She's at the beginning. She does the voiceover at the start.
And then all of a sudden, halfway through, it's the... this was finally a father figure John could believe in. He would never drink. He would never hit him. He would never say he didn't have time for him. And they are very valid points, and it really drives home the emotional core of this story. But I would say, to be critical, they kind of choose to, let's just chuck in some more Sarah Connor voiceover to make sense or to really hammer it home.
I didn't mind them, to be honest.
I'm being uber critical because
we've watched this film 1,000 times.
Yeah, and I love this film so much. It pretty much is a perfect blockbuster. There's a few weaknesses in there, but it hits the right points. And then it jumps into speaking of Sarah's monologue, it jumps into her nuclear holocaust, the nuclear fallout dream, which is terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, very scary because it's so realistic. And not wanting to sound all nerdy, but the whole idea of robots walking on the dust of our bones is actually very possible.
Yeah.
So I mean, this does run close to. I mean, it's probably far off. I don't think we are ever gonna. But it's woven into the consciousness of what could possibly happen.
Well, apparently they did a lot of research to sort of try and factor in what a nuclear explosion, destruction, what effect it would have on buildings, on people, and apparently some researchers have said it's a very accurate depiction of what could happen.
I never forget those images. Never forget them, of the buses just being blown inside out and the buildings, just the wave coming across. And everything I've seen, every other stock footage or computer graphical thing of what a nuclear thing, it all looks like that.
Well, so yeah, it's even like the text to her dialogue, children turning into burned paper. And it's... Yeah. And obviously, we're now both fathers, and it's a lot more poignant when you've got kids yourself, and you've got scenes of like a kids' play park and kids just turning to ash. It's
where George and I spend most of our time as fathers.
As fathers. But yeah, it's really disturbing scenes, and it really has an emotional gut punch, effectively.
It's the risk, George. It's what's at risk. It's what we're running from.
But the interesting thing between Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 is the fact that the first one is a chase movie. It is basically a bit like a horror. It's all about the fight to survive. This one, they're trying to save the world. They're trying to stop the world from being destroyed. So the stakes are so much bigger. And that's why Sarah, plot development, Sarah starts, as the Terminator's becoming more human, she's becoming more robotic and turning into a killer. And that's when she decides to go on a quest to take out Miles Dyson. I've got Assault on the Dysons is the next scene. We've talked about the role of machines in this film, and there's something I forgot about, the fact that you've got that whole sort of slow setup of Miles Dyson doing his typical tapping at a keyboard, I'm doing important stuff. Sarah's lining up the shot with the red dot. But what saves Miles Dyson? It's a machine. It's his son's remote-controlled car that runs into his foot. So Miles Dyson.
But it is a machine.
It's a machine that saves Miles Dyson. But I think we've got to talk about the guy that plays Miles Dyson, Joe Morton. He's a sort of a character actor that's popped up in bit parts. He's really good in this, isn't he?
Yeah, you could say he inhabits the role, but I can't see him as anything else when I've seen him in other stuff. And I have seen him in other stuff. He was on telly in the 90s, and he pops up here.
In Law and Order or something like that.
Stuff like that. But we just spent most of our childhood looking at each other going, no. Anyway, we'll insert the quote instead of doing terrible impressions.
I don't know how much longer I can hold this.
But that's normally when we need the toilet, but childish humour. But no, that entire scene, it's setting up, the music's great, the setup is great. And his role, when... I don't know, this film means more to me each time I see it. There's certain things that obviously when I watched it the first time, I was just like, action, chase, Arnie, gunfire, explosions. But this time you're like, oh my God, that scene when Arnie takes his arm off and reveals the thing that he's been working on. And then just as Sarah Connor says, he just lays it out for him step by step that you are responsible for pretty much the end for World War III. And then what is his character, how it develops after that, and how he still kind of like devils into it, saying, well, this chip was teaching us things that we'd never seen before, but then he keeps pulling himself back. Well, it all has to be destroyed. It's brilliantly done. I think
it's a really interesting twist on the sort of the mad scientist character. The fact that it's not like, but yeah, we're making a breakthrough, and he suddenly just, as soon as it's all laid out,
he's a family man.
As you say, as soon as it's all laid out to him, he's like, oh fuck. He's like, yeah. He goes, I think I'm going to throw up. Yeah, we have to destroy everything.
But he's still reminiscent as he's going through and destroying stuff, and some of the scenes they've taken out as him
sort of like being, oh, let's be careful, getting out the thing and getting out the hand and the chip and stuff. But yeah, then we get on to that whole Cyberdyne sequence again. It's just a phenomenal action sequence that keeps on going. You've got the whole setup of them slowly infiltrating it. And then, obviously, the silent alarms get raised. They release every single policeman in LA. it's
just
like,
send everything you've got in the area.
It's the guy and the woman.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's.
And then you get the whole set piece of Arnie going to town with a goddamn minigun.
Yeah, and not killing anybody. Although a lot of cop cars were killed.
0.00 casualties.
But I think 100% of all cars were destroyed.
There's a lot of... I've just got my notes, gunishment. Because it's sort of like, even when he runs out of bullets, he's like, right, okay, got the grenade launcher, I'll just start cracking away with that. Charlie, what haven't we touched on? What guest role have we got? It's a RetroRamble hero.
Dean Norris. The least that you expect. It's from Starship Troopers. I mean, obviously, you kids all know him from Breaking Bad. But Breaking Bad, just to put things in perspective, Breaking Bad started in, 2010, I think? That was Dean Norris's big break. That is what's put him into, I would say, like a B-list actor, making money, or that made him his money. But you've got to understand that, like, in 1991... 19 years previous, he was making films like this. He was making films. He was just a busy man, a reliable man, and we're very happy that you don't even see his face, but you know it's Dean. It's Dean.
And do you know who else he is that I forget about? Another Arnie film. He's Total Recall.
I know, but he's in Total Recall. Yeah, you've got a lot of nerve showing that face around here.
Look who's talking. You've got that whole set piece. You've got some really nice callbacks to Terminator 1. You've got, Arnie's doing the I'll be back bit, but instead of him crashing through the police station, he crashes through in the SWAT van to save them. The T-1000 taking Arnie's lines, jumping onto a helicopter and telling him to get out. There's some really nice bits in that. And then again, you immediately launch into another set piece. You've got the freeway chase. Sarah, again, being a bit of a badass, trying to take out the helicopter. But in terms of practical points, you've got that whole point where the helicopter flies under the underpass.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So that was a real stunt that was done. And apparently the camera team refused to shoot it because they thought it was too unsafe. So James Cameron filmed that himself. Got somebody to drive, but he's actually filming that stunt because he was determined to get it. Apparently the other bit of trivia is that whole sequence of the freeway chase, they had to light the entire stretch of freeway, which I think was like a few miles. And they had to call in every single light and bit of cable that was available in Hollywood. They literally went to every studio to ensure that the lighting was perfect for that whole scene. Again, just shows the sort of the dedication of James Cameron of getting that perfect shot. And again, callbacks to T1. You've got the truck,
the cat and mouse.
Yeah,
the tortoise and the hare.
Well, yeah, just as you think, they've taken out the helicopter, they're getting away. It's sort of like, no, he's getting. We need to keep moving. We need to keep moving. And then you're launched into the steel mill, the liquid nitrogen. And I think before this film, I've never heard of liquid nitrogen. It's always the thing that comes to mind when someone says liquid nitrogen. Like Terminator 2?
And the person just looks at you and says, yes, George, it's exactly like Terminator 2.
You've got that repetition from Terminator 1 of that machinery, but it's a steel mill. But even though it's all effects, you can almost feel the heat, can't you? All that
it's done very well.
Yes, it's done really well. Again, I think there's bits in the extended sequence after the T-1000's been frozen.
He's having trouble.
Yeah, he starts fucking up, essentially, doesn't he? Starts, getting stuck to stuff unintentionally.
Yeah, he's not working this liquid metal but it starts not working. I mean, it's a crazy concept to get your head around, but all you need to understand from these scenes is that he has been taking damage, and it kind of, I think, raises the stakes because it makes you think that, well, how are they going to stop him? How are they going to stop him? And it's like, oh, he has actually been taking damage. So,
well, that's the thing. It's sort of like I forget you forget how much of a beating Arnie takes off him in that steel mill, getting his face smashed against the thing. He gets his arm ripped off, and you're like, fuck, they're going to lose, aren't they?
But Arnie still makes it out. Still walks away from the T-1000.
He still makes it out. There's obviously with time travel, there's a lot of plot holes, but the main plot hole that I've never realised, but I've read about it, from doing my research. Apparently the scene where T-1000's torturing Sarah Connor and he's saying, call for John. Why doesn't he do that himself? He can mimic her, he can do a voice. But it's a great scene. It's a great moment of tension. Then you launch into the whole bit of using twins. You've got, I think, Linda Hamilton's sister turns up again when you've got two Sarah Connors in shot. Yeah. And then you've got Sarah Connor doing her...
amazing work with the shotgun.
Amazing work with the shotgun, which goes on to be spoofed brilliantly in Hot Shots, where she's pumping the shotgun and then the shotgun just flies off and she's just holding the pump action part. There's Hot Shots has actually also got the liquid metal bit with Saddam Hussein, hasn't it?
Yeah, where he molds together with his dog.
I need to give that another watch.
But it was the 90s, these very tongue-in-cheek, very self-aware. I mean, although Tim Berners-Lee had made the internet, we didn't know about it. This is how we were sharing pop culture. Films were referencing other films. That was comedy back then. That was your meme. That was your internet joke. That's what we had back then.
True. So yeah, I don't know what else we can say about the ending apart from I don't really want to talk about the thumb and the flames. I know why you cry, because it's quite emotional. Okay,
it works though.
Shut up, you're crying.
I might be crying a little bit, but I think it's worked really well into the film, and I think it's like the fact that they kill him. Or that he suggests it. I mean, you kind of know that Sarah's like, she wants to get rid of him the entire film, sort of thing. But they do have some nice comments in the steel mill where she kind of shows respect at the end.
Well, they shake hands.
Yeah, exactly. So there's those moments, but then it's like, no, I have to. It's not that because maybe you were thinking, oh, the T-1000 is going to kill Arnie, but then Sarah's going to save the day. It's not. It's like they're all together at the end, and they make this decision consciously, and John is getting taught a harsh lesson in sacrifice, and Sarah can't wait to press that button to send him into the flames, and Arnie's just going down into the flames. So if you're going to go down in flames.
Well, it's one thing we slightly touched on, but for a Retro Ramble podcast, we haven't really discussed it much in detail, but it's how, again, it's a recurring thing. How good is the soundtrack? That drums and clanging.
That noise that's made like the ding ding. It's sort of like, it sounds like a really like electronic string instrument. It's this unstoppable force, and that's taken obviously from the first Terminator. But yeah, the soundtrack, and then there's
it's the composer. Is it Brad Friedel? I can't think of anything else he's done, but it's such an iconic soundtrack. And obviously it's not as 80s synth-tastic as the first one, which is some great sort of synth chase music, which we can insert later. Again, it builds on those themes. It's more operatic, it's more epic, like the film is, and it really sends that last scene home with him being lowered in, slowly sacrificed, lowered into the flames, and yeah, it gets me every time.
It is. It's a moving piece, but it's not too cheesy. It's not too. There's nothing in this film that's too cheesy. It's like, it's so brilliantly done. It's a real talent. You kind of wish that Cameron made more films, but I think if he made more films, you would lose the Cameron-esque thing, like he has, as you were saying before, he has to do something different. Like, wasn't it with Titanic, they built a model that was a third the size of the actual Titanic? But, and then with Avatar, with the 3D filming, and then God knows, what he's planning to do with, in the next thing, but he's always pushing the limits, further and further. So yeah, to go back to the music, I think you've got this chase music and this sort of very instrumental percussion, but then there is this nice sort of hopeful music, that joins it all together.
It is a cracking soundtrack. It's very epic. It's very emotional. The Terminators, they've destroyed everything. They've destroyed the T-1000. They've destroyed it all. Potentially, they've averted Skynet. Then we get to the final scene, which is an all cuts, is them driving on the road and Sarah's voiceover. If a machine can learn to be human, maybe we can all learn to be more human too. That was born out of necessity, apparently, because James Cameron had filmed this whole happy ending, which flashed forward to an alternate future where they've changed the future. Sarah's in the play park. She's an old lady. She's watching John Connor play with his kids in the play park. They're all wearing the 90s
idea of futuristic clothing.
Yeah. So, a bit like Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey from they're wearing a little bit of plastic and tinfoil baseball caps and stuff. They've their socks
That's
tucked
the Future 2 type thing.
Yeah, socks tucked into their jeans or stuff like that. Ties with t-shirts. Sarah's wearing this old lady prosthetic, and for a film that's got such good sort of practical effects, she looks a bit like a cat lady. And yeah, so they filmed this whole scene of her in the future. John's a senator and Judgment Day's been averted. And the studio, Mario Casa, was like, that's a terrible ending. It just doesn't work. James Cameron's like, well, let's just see how it plays in test screenings. And all the test screenings are like, no, that ending's terrible. Get rid of it. And this was literally weeks before it was released, because I say there was
test screening. Yeah,
they were so up against it to get it released for Independence Day weekend. James Cameron looked through the footage. He's like, what can we reuse? What can you... And there's basically footage before they approach the Cyberdyne building of them driving down the highway, driving down the road at night, and they had something like 8 seconds of footage where it's just the camera rolling on the road. And he's like, okay, what dialogue can I write for Sarah Connor that sums up a vision of hope in 8 seconds? And that's what he did. So rung up Linda Hamilton, read these lines out, we're going to put it over this footage. And whilst he's such a control freak, he's also realizes that sometimes, it wasn't a perfectly conceived idea. Sometimes you have to work on the fly.
Okay, well, I think that brings us to our monthly feature of Coulda Woulda Shoulda.
So we've got 2 interesting castings for potential Coulda Woulda Shouldas. So the first one I didn't know about until I did my research for this episode. So apparently none other than Denzel Washington was approached for the role of Miles Dyson.
Wow, probably a bit of a small part for him? Or...
Well...
No, it's quite a big part, I suppose.
Quite a big part, and he was on the cusp of becoming an incredible actor, A-list actor. And he even said, he goes, no offence to Jim Cameron, but I read the script and all I thought was, All this guy does is he looks scared and he sweats a lot. I had to pass. But the most what the hell were they thinking was apparently James Cameron wanted Billy Idol, as in White Wedding, as a T-1000. But Billy Idol, being a rock star that he is, and managed to injure himself, ironically, in a motorcycle accident, and ruled himself out the role. So that's why they started looking for a relative unknown and came across the man with the pointy ears, Robert Patrick.
And the ball sack.
The man with the pointy ears, ball sack, that defined running for a whole generation of males, Robert Patrick.
Brilliant. Okay, so I mean, in terms of how this film still stacks up today, I think you don't need to look very far on the internet to be confirmed that Terminator 2 is probably in the top 5 of sequels of all time. It's probably in the top 10 of the best action films of all time. And the effects, I think for my money, the effects still look good. They don't look too dated. It's really just the human fashion and the haircuts that make this film look dated. This film did brilliantly at the time, didn't it, George? It got a ton of awards, and all with good reason.
The original being a low-budget film, didn't win much. But yeah, it won 4 Academy Awards, so Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, Best Makeup, and obviously Best Visual Effects. It was the highest-grossing film of 91, and it's still the highest-grossing film of Schwarzenegger's career.
In terms of anything that you could argue, for me, I don't think there's anything that doesn't work. I don't think there's anything...
Apart from the mullets.
I didn't say I had a problem with them. I just said there was a lot of them. I am all for bringing mullets back. Let's just go for a new look, George. We're going to start a trend. It's going to be mullets, T-shirts, and ties. Okay, that's the future. I've seen it
in the 90s.
I've seen it in a fever dream. No, but in terms of what didn't work, I tell you what didn't work about this film is that James Cameron tied up the story in a beautiful, neat bow, killed off the Terminators, finished the story, and that closed the loop, and there was no need for any other films to ever be made in this film. And what was that? Didn't you tell me there's some quote from even Arnie came out with?
There's a great interview.
This was about when Terminator 2 had come out, wasn't it?
Well, this is when they were on set. So Empire just republished an interview from 1991 summer, and he even says, he goes, "Where else can they go? This is it. This is the answer." And those poor studio executives are sitting out trying to figure out how to top it. And you know what? They can't.
So there it is. That was our review of T2 Judgment Day. George, is there anything? I mean, we had a very long chat about the production that went behind it. We probably had a very self-indulgent chat about everything we love about that film. Is there anything that we missed out, or you think that we should probably just finish up with?
We, I suppose, should shed a little bit of light, or shed our thoughts on the sequels of Diminishing Returns.
Which sequels? I can't remember them making any sequels.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real travesty. It seems like Terminator is one of the many sort of several franchises that we've been discussing on this podcast that continues to sort of limp along because of its brand recognition. And yeah, the sequels are diminishing returns. That's not to say there are some good bits in each of the sequels. I mean, it's been a while since I've watched T3. I don't know when was the last time you saw it.
It's been a long time. I remember, I think, I don't know if we actually talked about it in that just review there, but I remember the ending being quite a shock and being like sneaking up behind you, but that being the best thing, and the rest of it kind of just being retreading the same points of T2. Yeah?
Yeah, no, I agree. The ending's the most impressive thing of the third one. Fourth one had promise by trying to focus on the future war, but just didn't bring that idea to life and didn't really do it justice. And then again, sort of ended up the ending retreading another sort of warehouse industrial fight in a factory.
But I do think that there was more to like in the fourth than there was in the third or in the recent outing, which I don't think really is anywhere. I think both 3 and 4 are much better than than this most recent one, Genesis.
Genesis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Genesis is the complete opposite. I think it's like the opening 20 minutes is mildly entertaining because it's doing the Back to the Future thing by revisiting Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. We've already touched on, or we may have touched on in the past, how badly cast that film is. With, what is it? I think Screen Junkies on the Honest Trailers described him as the homeless man's Channing Tatum. Jai caught me.
Well put.
Yeah, it's just a mess of the film. So yeah, is it worth now talking about the future of the franchise?
Well, yeah, because you were telling me the other day that it's actually finally coming back to Cameron after that sort of cringeworthy promotion he did behind Genesis. If you enjoyed the first two films, you're going to really enjoy parts of this new film. They're really well scripted.
You
promotion.
might enjoy.
Yeah. So tell us, George, the rights are going back to Cameron. What else has just come out in recent years?
Back to Daddy. So yeah, it was announced earlier in the year that the rights are reverting back to James Cameron, I think in 2019, and talks have already started that he's going to relaunch the franchise because he's so busy, got his head stuck right up Avatar. He's just taking on a producer role, and Tim Miller of Deadpool is directing. So that was announced at the start of the year, and it's literally over the past few days, past week or so, Arnie's announced that he will be returning, and they've alluded to that he'll be playing the role of the sort of, he might not be a Terminator, he'll be the person they've based the Terminators on. So like where have they got that inspiration for that human form from?
Like they didn't do that in Alien 3 with Bishop.
Yeah, very similar to that. And they did do it as a deleted scene in Terminator 3, which is worth checking out if you're a diehard fan, just because it's so cringeworthy. But I think in the past couple of days they've announced that none other than Linda Hamilton will also be returning. So yeah, it's a bit of it seems to be splitting audiences in terms of the reaction to this news. Some people are saying, "Oh Christ, just let the franchise die," and then some people are being cautiously optimistic, like as I am, that if anyone can bring the Terminator back into being something interesting, is obviously going to be the guy that came up with the ideas. And James Cameron, as we've talked about, has form with sequels. That's something that he's got to prove himself again with the many Avatar sequels he's going to unleash on us. But yeah, it'll be interesting if Linda Hamilton's interested in returning. It may be, should be a strong idea. And the other thing that they flagged up is that, again, it's going to wipe out the timeline. So this is going to be a direct sequel to Terminator 2. So again, they're doing, I think you talked about Aliens before. That was something that was pitched recently, was that Neil Blomkamp, the guy who did District 9, was going to do an Alien 5, I think it is, and that was going to act as a direct sequel to Aliens and wipe out all the other films. But that seems to have sort of stalled and been overridden by Ridley Scott. But yeah, I say I'm cautiously optimistic to see what they could do and what story Cameron can come up with.
Well, will they pick up on the thing that I just saw this last time watching it, and I think it's been picked up elsewhere, obviously, because there's a lot of fan-made stuff out there about where it could go. But the fact that that Arnie actually did leave, the T-800 left another arm at the end of T2, which I don't think was picked up in any of the other films. Which maybe Cameron's going to go back and do that, and maybe I don't know. Let's see where it's going to go. I think we've talked probably enough about Terminator, about James Cameron, and that. I think it's clear that this is a very big film. I mean, these are the films we're picking, films of our childhoods. This was a big one, and we hope you've enjoyed it, George. I think it was an emotional journey for both of us, wasn't it?
Well, now I know why we cry.
So. What does the future hold for us, George? Do we know for certain what we're going to be coming back with?
I'm just going to keep coming up with Terminator quotes. The future's not set.
Okay.
No, I think we talked about for the next episode, we talked about who you're going to call Ghostbusters.
Well, with Halloween coming up, I think that makes perfect sense. So before we sign off, I've got a little bit of movie news because I only got invited to another premiere by Paramount.
You're so hot these days.
Yeah, I mean, I thought taking my trousers off at the last premiere because they said, you know, make yourself feel comfortable, I wouldn't get invited back. But lo and behold, there I was with Jennifer Lawrence and Darren Aronofsky at the French premiere of Mother. And what a mother of a film. I don't want to overuse that pun, but you haven't seen it yet, George, have you?
No, you know, I was going to say, hang on, that's my role. I'm the film geek. I go and see the weird films, not you.
Shut up. It's called Cross-Pollination of Skills, Bruder.
Ooh, nice. Okay. Love it. Yeah, I've heard very mixed reviews. I mean, Aronofsky, it can really divide audiences. I really like The Fountain, but I know some people loathe it, and I think it's the same with what else has he done that's been really divisive? But it seems like this is another film that either people are really enjoying or really hating.
Well, I think it's teetering on that thing of, and I have had it from inside knowledge from my man at Paramount, that maybe audiences just aren't getting it. And without spoiling anything, you know, I think going in knowing as little as possible is what I would advise. But the way I would sum it up is to basically condense a story that delves into the frailty, the ambivalence, and the arrogance of all of mankind into 2 hours is fascinating. That Darren Aronofsky, I can't even say it, I'm just going to call him Darrenofsky because that seems to be his nickname in the industry. But to do what he's done is so impressive, and the fact that nobody else has ever actually tried to do what he's done. I mean, I'm not spoiling anything by saying that the film is a metaphor, but it's crazy that nobody's done that. So I can't recommend it high enough. I think people are talking about it. You should definitely go and see it. Can't recommend it enough. I didn't know what was going on until the end, and I love films that do that. But sounds great, look and feel of it's great. Great performances from Bardem and Lawrence, and obviously stand down, Captain Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer, and plenty of others. So check it out. Nothing much else from me. Probably in the next episode we'll look at the Christmas releases of both films, movies, games. It's because it's the time to buy stuff and get invested. But what about you, George? Anything else we want to cover before we sign off?
No, that I'm sure I've talked enough in this podcast. I'm a little bit exhausted.
Okay, well, thank you everybody. As I say, George and I are we're on the highway now, looking. We don't know where we're going. Hopefully to find Kyle Reese or something.
I think Michael Biehn's available.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Foster parents are kind of dicks, huh?
John! Come on, get your ass inside. Do what your mother tells you.
She's not my mother, Todd.